Chris is close to Christine. Hi, my name is Steve Welch. Before we wrap up today, how about one last round of applause for all 10 companies, IBC and Penn, for making this happen. And if you like what you see here today, I would encourage you, August 7th, we have DreamIt Demo Day in New York City for our New York class. There we'll have 15 additional companies launched in the wild, and I think you'll be as impressed as you've been today with that class coming out up there. Also like to thank Dana and the crew of our army of interns, I should say, that made today possible. I won't name them all like Max, because I'm sure I will forget names, but nonetheless, they really have made today possible. So this is a picture from Apollo 8 in 1968. Just 7 years earlier, President Kennedy had declared we'd send a person to the moon and return them safely to Earth. And when he made that declaration, before the end of the decade, and when he made that declaration, it seemed crazy. It seemed crazy even to those within NASA. And had you been given that project, if you'd been the project manager, you would have been probably thinking your career was over. You would have looked at the resources you had at NASA, your personnel resources, your financial resources, technology, and you would have said, this task cannot be done. Just to take one example, you'd have looked at the flight computer that needed to be developed. Okay, in a very short period of time, you'd have realized you needed a flight computer delivered. But then what you'd realize is you needed to design a flight computer. And then what you would realize is you need to design that flight computer with a bunch of technologies that had never really been used before. And in fact, you would ultimately realize you needed to design that system with a bunch of technologies that still had not yet been invented. You'd have to figure out how to work with some of the largest institutions in the world, United States Air Force, and small startups that nobody had ever heard of. You'd have had to be able to bring together disciplines across electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, computer science, material science, rocketry, mathematics, physics, biometrics, and even PR. And all that would fall on this gentleman, James Webb. James Webb was born in 1906, was the son of a local superintendent of the school system, went on to get an education degree from North Carolina in education. If you can imagine you wouldn't probably suspect the person that was taking us to the moon had an education degree. But he worked his way up through the DC political scene over decades. And perhaps his greatest strength was keeping money flowing from Congress when they had tremendous setbacks. I mean, huge amounts of money going through huge setbacks, both PR and actual real technical setbacks. His other great strength, though, was surrounding himself with great people and bringing together the team that would be able to manage this collaboration effort. This is George Miller. George Miller was born a little bit later, 1918 in St. Louis, Missouri, the son of an electrician and a secretary. He ultimately fell in love with rockets at the age of 12, was building rockets, miniature rockets in the backyard, and he went on to graduate from University of Missouri with technology. After he graduated in 1938, applied everywhere he could find, including GE. They turned him down for a job. Ultimately went to Bell Labs for a fellowship just to make ends meet. And it's there that he was recognized not only being a great engineering mind, but also being an individual that was exceptional at managing teams and technology. And it is George that would go out and build the collaboration network that would make the Apollo mission possible. And in that process, he would come across a small startup that nobody had ever heard of called Fairchild Semiconductor, founded by Bob Noyce. Now, Bob, just to give you a little background, Bob's also quite interesting. Grew up in Iowa, was born in Iowa, third of 4 boys. Born into a very religious family. His father was a minister. His mother was a missionary. His earliest childhood memory, just to give you an idea of the sense of what kind of person he was, his earliest childhood memory was 5 years old. He beat his father in ping pong. And any of those that you have a 5-year-old can imagine beating your father in ping pong was a pretty exciting event. Ran up to tell, Mommy, I beat Dad in ping pong. And he remembers her response to this day. And that response was, well, wasn't that nice of Daddy to let you win in ping pong? At which he replied, well, that's not a game. If you're going to play, you play to win. Bob ultimately was credited with inventing the integrated circuit, founding Intel, and in many ways made the Apollo mission possible through those inventions. Because it was the integrated circuit and a number of other things that not only made the flight computer possible in the Apollo missions, but also made what's in your pocket work in a lot of different ways. Collaboration across generations, across disciplines, across geography, that is how you solve complex problems. And let's be honest, in society, the easiest stuff's all taken care of. What's left is complex and difficult, It's collaborations like what you've seen here today that are going to solve those problems. Bringing together companies like IBC, one of the most respected payers in the country. Penn Medicine, one of the most respected providers in the world. DreamIt Ventures, an engine for innovation on the planet. And bringing into that fold 10 startups, dozens of the best and the brightest entrepreneurs. That is how we're going to solve these problems. Now you'll notice I showed you a picture of Apollo 8 and not Apollo 11. And there's a reason for that, because we're not there yet. The companies you've seen here today in 3.5 months have made incredible strides. I mean, if you knew where they were 3.5 months ago, you would not believe where they are today. But we're not there yet. And it's incumbent upon each and every person in this audience to give in the different ways they can. Many of you, that's going to be writing checks, making investments that will have great economic returns, but also will help and go to providing the solutions to the healthcare challenges that we face today. For many of you, it'll be working, spending your time, your energy, and helping making these companies introductions, or giving these companies the introductions they need, the guidance they need. But I assure you that if we can put a man on the moon using slide rulers and vacuum tubes, we can bring down the cost of healthcare and increase quality. It's simply a matter of collaboration. Thank you, and please get to know these companies.